Hello everyone. Just to set the scene, my husband, my 2 children, and I make up our family of 4. After being married for 8 years, my 38-year-old husband and I have been together for nearly 11 years. Throughout all 11 of those years, my mother-in-law Pam has been a huge hassle. She had been a help at the beginning of our marriage, so we felt somewhat obligated to her. Therefore, we had been putting up with her thus far. That's why we always put up with her, regardless of how absurd she would act. She had supported us through our darkest moments, after all. In addition, my husband felt guilty leaving her alone herself because she was a widow who had lost her father-in-law a few years prior. Whenever we could, we would spend time with her, but most of the time, we were simply happy to be away from her. She was never open to hearing other people's perspectives, not because she was a bad person. Rather, it was just that she always thought she knew best. You know those know-it-all old individuals who believe experience is more important than intelligence as a whole? That would be Pam. But since she had supported us from the beginning, we made an effort to support her now, when she was in much more need of our help. We made it a point to see her at least twice a month, if not 3 times, because she was a doting grandmother. Because we didn't want to argue with her, my spouse and I would attempt to be kind and nod in agreement any time she said anything that we didn't quite agree with. The hard way taught us that fighting with her was not only pointless, but also made us angry. But now that I think about it, maybe she wouldn't have done what she did if I had spoken up for what I believed in when I had the chance. In light of that, I previously disclosed that I am a father of 2 children, a 4-year-old boy and a 6-year-old daughter. My kids adore their grandmother because they are unaware of her judgmental and rigid nature, which sets them apart from us. She is just their grandmother to them, giving in to their every want and allowing them to run about the home unhindered. A month or 2 ago, my spouse and I had to leave the kids with Pam since our regular babysitter had unexpectedly become ill and we needed to travel to an out-of-town wedding. The attitude had changed significantly from when we had dropped our kids off at Pam's house to when we returned 2 days later to pick them up. Both of our kids were itching to get home, and we had a feeling that something had gone wrong while they were staying with their grandmother, so we were unable to remain and talk with her that day. Normally, we can't persuade them to go, but on this particular occasion, things were different. I didn't give it much thought until I saw that the suitcase of clothes I had packed was significantly lighter as we were leaving. I didn't notice most of the clothing I had packed for my kid were missing from that suitcase until I arrived home. I looked through the other bags too, but I couldn't find those clothing. When I questioned my daughter about it, she told me without emotion that her grandma had thrown them all away and promised to start dressing more femininely going forward. Everything made sense all of a sudden, but even by Pam's strange standards, I couldn't believe she would do such a thing. She would say absurd things all the time, of course, but this was going too far. Undoubtedly, clothes are not cheap, and my spouse and I make a point of purchasing high-end, eco-friendly clothing to ensure that it lasts for a long time. Pam throwing everything away was not only a terrible waste of money, but it was also inappropriate given why she had done it. I phoned her as soon as I informed my husband about it. She made no attempt to refute it. She informed us that she did not believe it was a good idea for us to dress our daughter in gender-neutral clothing in order to confuse her. To put things in perspective, the majority of the items I brought for my daughter were baggy shorts from the boys' area and huge boys' t-shirts. We let our children choose their own clothes, and my daughter chose them as they fit her better than the items in the girls' department. She doesn't simply wear clothes for guys. She enjoys dressing up and wearing dresses and skirts when we go to expensive restaurants together. However, she favors comfort over style when it comes to everyday wear, and I don't see anything wrong with that. As Pam mentions, it's absolutely not confusing my child. My spouse and I were furious and informed her that even though the clothing were expensive and wouldn't fit our baby for very long because she was still growing, she had no right to throw them away. We would now have to go shopping. We informed Pam that we wanted her to apologize to her grandchildren, as well as to us, since they were extremely angry, and that we expected her to pay us the money that she owed us for tossing those garments away, We were ready to overlook everything at that moment and give her another opportunity, but she ruined it by choosing to start a fight with us. She informed us that she would not be giving us any money and that she did not regret what she had done since someone had to do it, because parenting in this age had become too soft. Rather of offering an apology, she reiterated her previous statements and actions, asserting that she was preventing my daughter from experiencing gender confusion in the future, and that it was not her responsibility if I was unable to see what was best for her. When we tried to fight with her, she pointed out that she had helped us when we were first married and needed money since my husband's new business was unstable, I was on maternity leave, and my firm was not paying me. She was correct. In fact, she had helped us. We so promised her that over the following several months, we would pay her the balance we owed her until we were even. As of right now, we would begin by adding up all the money she had thrown away when she threw away our daughter's clothes. I also informed her that because she had obviously traumatized our children, she was now forbidden from entering our home and would no longer be allowed to visit them. Before she could say anything more, we blocked her. I talked to my kids again to find out more details, since I could see why my daughter was unhappy, but because all of his toys and clothes were still in place, I couldn't figure out why my son was responding the same way. We then learned that Pam had made a lot out of the situation since she had phoned both of our children while she was throwing away the garments, one by one, that she did not like. My daughter began to weep, and my son attempted to console her and prevent his grandmother from upsetting his sister. However, he was obviously unable to do so, and Pam began shouting at the two of them, further traumatizing them. They both started weeping while they were telling us about this occurrence because they were so angry with her. My spouse was, and still is, completely on board with me when it came to not letting Pam have any further involvement with our children after that. She stopped attempting to get in touch with us after we blocked her, so we assumed she was going to stop by herself. After a week or two, we had anticipated hearing from her, but when that didn't happen, we began to think she was done with us. Before her arrival a few days ago, my spouse and I had all but forgotten about her. Luckily for us, my kids weren't at home and were spending the day with my parents. Otherwise, they would have had to endure this situation once more. Nevertheless, the bell began ringing as my spouse and I were conversing in the living room, and we could see through our windows that Pam was outside. Following some deliberation, we chose to open the door, but keep her out since we were curious about her purpose for being here. She didn't take long to act. She stated she was coming to seek custody of her grandchildren, since we were obviously failing at raising them properly, and as soon as we answered the door, she handed us some paperwork. She claimed to have previously discussed this with her lawyer, and that they would live with her full-time until my husband and I had settled all of the debt we owed her. It was possible for us to share custody after that. She had anticipated that it would take us a few years to save up the amount of money she was requesting because she wanted my husband to reimburse her for all the money his parents had spent raising him, in addition to us returning all the money she had given us during our difficult times. It was obviously a huge sum of money, and we would need a long time to pay off that type of debt. That wasn't even the most insane aspect about it. It seemed absurd to me that she believed it was perfectly okay to demand and say this. I ordered her to go, and if she didn't, I would be contacting the police, as my husband was too startled to speak. I really had no desire to waste time talking to her or attempting to convey how absurd this was. None of that would have been worthwhile. She believed what she was seeking was very reasonable, so true to her character, she refused to depart and declared that she would not be leaving until we had signed the paperwork with our lawyer. That was all I needed to hear when she added that, given how soft we had become, it was evident that we were not capable of raising 2 children on our own. I quickly reached for my phone and dialed the police. She remained even after that. As I informed her that I would seek a restraining order to ensure she would never see any of us again, she remained still. She replied that she would rather that I give it a shot, adding that she would see to it that I lost custody of my kids, because it wasn't as if she had attempted to harm me or us. I was really getting tired of her, but all I had to do was wait for the police to arrive and get her off our land. That's when her insane episodes began. She was shouting, kicking, and swearing at us when she had to be hauled away. Since our children had already experienced trauma from her once, I'm so relieved they weren't around to witness it. I wasn't going to let it happen again. For my part, I don't believe that I violated any laws when I initially banned her or threatened to get a restraining order against her. My spouse is supporting me as well. The rest of my husband's family is currently against us, despite the fact that he remained silent the entire time his mother was here since he was deeply surprised. They assume I'm being really ungrateful, since I've totally forgotten that she was the only person who supported us throughout our difficult time of having a newborn and making ends meet. I'm not sure how hard it is for the rest of the family to grasp, but just because she had supported us when we needed it doesn't mean she has the right to control our life. Everyone has been hounding us, telling us that calling the police on her was incredibly inappropriate, especially since all she wanted to do was watch out for us. Really? Is this how people watch out for each other these days, threatening to take away their children unless they give you back the money they owe you? It doesn't convince me. Since my husband had previously been the family's rock star, and then everything changed overnight, it is clear that he has been the one most impacted by everything. He is currently the target of everyone's hatred and blame, which has been extremely difficult for him to handle. But since it's not technically my family, I'm not particularly touched by it. He agrees with me when I keep attempting to persuade him that what we are doing is the proper thing to do. He hasn't spoken anything more, but it's clear that he's furious. I feel like I could be going too far because of it. I'm not sure. I have no doubt that the rest of the family will cut us off as well if we break things off with Pam and go ahead and get a restraining order against her. That's okay with me. My spouse might be able to handle it better than I can, but I'm not sure. Thus, I would like to know why Aitia is attempting to get a restraining order against my mother-in-law. The first update. Hello. Well, I made the decision to accept the advice that was given in the comments, and I had a conversation with my husband about what was going on with him. I had also attempted to talk to him earlier, but he insisted that he was okay and that he would ultimately get over it. My attempts to communicate with him were unsuccessful. Because our children had returned home, and because he had not yet returned to his normal routine, it was clear that I was beginning to feel concerned. I eventually made the decision to face him and ask him what was really going on with him last night, after the children had gone to sleep. We hadn't even filed a restraining order yet, since I don't know whether he is all right with it or not. It had been more than 2 weeks since our last encounter with his mother, and we hadn't even done that yet. I told him that he could continue to act as if everything was well with him, but I knew that he was not fine since we had known one other for a very long time. I let him continue to pretend that everything was fine with him. I explained to him that in order for us to deal with the situation, we must first accept that there is something wrong right now. Only after we have done so will we be able to find a solution to the problem as it currently stands. It was then that I informed him that he needed to speak with me, and he did so at last. At first, he merely appeared to be in a state of deep depression, and I could tell that he was sobbing in his head while he struggled to find the right words to express his feelings. As a result, I did nothing except sit by his side and try to console him as much as I could. Despite the fact that his family members are of varying personalities, my spouse has always had a strong attachment to them. To be honest, who isn't? Every single one of us has a deep passion for our family, particularly when they have always shown us love and affection throughout our whole lives. He informed me that he was just finding it extremely difficult to deal with the notion that he might not be able to solve the situation with his family ever again. He had always been the darling of his family, and you could say that he had always been their sweetheart. In a perfect world, he would have never wanted a crisis of this nature to occur in the first place. Nevertheless, now that it had occurred, there was no turning back. He was truly depressed because he was aware that he was going to have to remove all of them from his life. This was the driving force behind his sadness. He was already in the process of beginning it, and it was not an easy procedure. I could understand why he was so unhappy about it, since it was the kind of thing that was genuinely rather dismal, He informed me that so far, he had been able to forgive his family's traditional and regressive behavior because of their immense love for him. But that didn't seem sufficient at the moment. It was so sad that they had demonstrated that, in the end, they valued their false ideas more than their relationships, that it just did not cut it. His mother and the rest of his family don't love him for who he is. They all want to control him. Above all, his mother's actions had caused him serious pain. He stated he had always embraced his mother for who she was up to this point. He had even gone so far as to attempt to figure out why she thought some things were so terrible. He attempted to show respect for her beliefs, even if he disagreed with the most of them, and she was unable to show us even the barest civility. Furthermore, she even demanded that we tolerate this kind of contempt for our children. In order to keep me from becoming anxious or disturbed, he also revealed to me other things that had happened in the past, but which he had never discussed. However, it seems that Pam had informed him that, despite my constant desire to work, she would prefer that I give up my career and become a stay-at-home mother when my daughter was born. Making your own money is a source of pride in my family. Therefore, working was crucial to me because I wanted to make my family, and most importantly, myself, proud. My spouse informed me that, since I had recently given child and was vulnerable, he had had to have several arguments with his mother to ensure that she would not bring it up to me. He did not want her to upset me by implying that I should resign from my position. He also informed me that when I gave birth to our son, he and his mother had to argue again, since she was even more certain that I should give up my work and take care of the kids. He had to stop her talking to me about it once again, since he didn't want me to become angry, but he was unable to stop her this time. In addition, he expressed to me that he was quite disappointed with himself, since he was of the opinion that he ought to have terminated his relationship with his mother earlier, rather than waiting for such a long time until something terrible occurred. At long last, once he had finished his speech, I gave him a hug. I congratulated him on being the finest father and informed him that we were both excellent parents. There was nothing that we needed to be concerned about. While up until this point, he had also made an effort to be a good son, but now he had made the decision to be a good parent, and there was absolutely nothing wrong with any of those things. She had passed a certain line, and we were fully right in wanting to break away from her. Despite the fact that I had also attempted to endure Pam to the best of my ability since we were grateful to her, she had crossed that limit. He had done the right thing by not telling me that he wanted me to stop my job after I had my children, so I reassured him that he was a good parent and a wonderful husband as well. I believe that he was a good father and a good husband. After everything that she had done for me, I would not have wanted to cut her off, but on the other hand, I would have truly loathed being around her much more than I already did if she bothered me about quitting my job. This would have put me in a difficult situation, since, on the one hand, I would not have wanted to cut her off. Nevertheless, we were able to talk things out, and he appeared to be in a far better mood this morning. As a result, we are planning on going to the lawyer this evening in order to settle things out. The second update. Hey, so we had a conversation with the attorney and inquired about whether or not we have sufficient grounds to petition for a restraining order at this time. It is unfortunate that he shared the same viewpoint as the majority of individuals who commented on the post, which was that we need to desist from doing so at this time since we do not really have the proof to demonstrate that she poses a threat to our family and to us. It is not really sufficient to file for a protection order because the only thing that she had done was show up at our house with documents and demand custody of our children. This is the only thing that she had done. He urged us to keep a record of all the encounters that we have with her from this point forward, and if we continue to feel threatened by her, we should absolutely come to him. The plan is for us to proceed in this manner. In an ideal world, it would be evident that we would not want her to inconvenience us again. Nevertheless, if we are able to convince her to stay away from us forever, then I suggest that we should go ahead and do it. The only people who have texted him so far are members of my husband's family and his relatives. They have told him that he has failed as a son and other such things, but she has not yet reached out to us. As of right now, Nobody is harassing us since we have blocked the majority of the members of his family who had chosen her side. Considering that Pam has been rather quiet on her end, it is either that she is making preparations to do something significant, or that she has given up. Any way you look at it, I couldn't care less. Having a conversation with the attorney provided me with new perspectives, and I am certain that in the event that she engages in any behavior, we can simply videotape it, and she will be legally compelled to stay away from us at that point. My husband is doing a lot better since the previous update that I provided, and I am really pleased for him that he is finally finding it a bit easier to deal with what is going on. I am very happy for him. In addition, it appears that a lot of people are under the impression that he had compelled me to maintain contact with Pam for a considerable amount of time, and I would like to point out that this is not indeed the case. An agreement had been reached between the two of us that we would make an effort to be there for her and to tolerate her behavior. I mentioned that we owed her money, thus it was necessary for us to do it. Now that I think about it, I see that it was not a wise choice. Nevertheless, it is over now. I would like to make it clear that my spouse did not coerce me into doing anything. I hope this clarifies the situation. Both of us contributed equally to the success of it. On the other hand, I will keep you updated on any developments that may occur following this. The third update. Hello, everyone. In my most recent post, I indicated that Pam had not gotten in touch with us since the previous time we had a conversation. I had been assuming that she was probably intending to do something significant as a result of this lack of communication. She made a full and absolute fool out of herself in front of so many people that I can't even laugh out loud as I'm typing this out. I was correct, and I'm so happy that I predicted it, because I had believed that she was going to do something hazardous, but instead, she made a fool out of herself in front of so many people. We haven't spoken to Pam in over 3 weeks, so a good amount of time has elapsed since my initial post here. We were all enjoying a movie together last night, when all of a sudden, my phone was inundated with texts and notifications. My spouse was using his phone as I turned to face him, so it was clear that the same thing was occurring to him. When we got on the internet, we saw that an anonymous account, which was clearly Pam's, had tagged us in a post. She had shared images of our family along with the following caption. Most people assume that a family should look like this. However, if you look closely, you will see that there are many issues with this picture. The lady's business casual dress is the primary indicator that she is a working woman. I would want to know when we stopped believing that our spouses would provide us with adequate income to raise our kids and cover all of the bills. When did we get so dependent on going out and finding work on our own? Is it because this generation of men is so weak and feeble? I'm not sure, but you really ought to ask these folks. But one thing is certain. We must act swiftly to address this issue because, in addition to being fundamentally corrupt, this generation is also poisoning the brains of the next generation. Just have a peek at the tiny daughter's outfit, please. We used to dress our sons in these kinds of garments back in the day, but these days, who knows? It's simply an absolute shame, and for this reason, our nation is no longer able to advance. We must stop this if we hope to bring our civilization back to its previous splendor. If you agree with me, please share this message to assist me in mending this family. The last sentence of the post gave it away, if the rest of it hadn't previously. It was clearly Pam, and I couldn't even be angry with her for posting anything of this nature, since it was so funny that she actually believed it would work. This was obviously her idea of a petition, one that would be laughed out of any court in the world. I assumed something horrible had happened when my phone started to flood with alerts, but the majority of the messages I was receiving made fun of this article and asked me if I had seen it yet. With my spouse, it was also the same. We read that post together, and as we glanced at each other, I believe we laughed nonstop for almost 30 minutes. That post's comments were entertaining as well. Because we were tagged in that post, many of our friends saw it and were leaving the best jokes in their comments. Though you guys shouldn't have to, I think you guys need to be able to laugh too. I suggest that in order to eliminate the necessity for 2 sources of income, we jump in our time machines and return to trading with animals. Should you concur, please share this content. It's unbelievable that ladies are dressing like this. What comes next? Dads with eyelashes? Ludicrous. Even though they were plainly making fun of that absurd message and everything, we still made sure to snap screenshots so we could provide them to the attorney. Additionally, we're going to get in touch with her and ask that she remove the post. It will be advantageous for us if she becomes combative, as it will provide us with a valid excuse to request a restraining order, ending our relationship with her. Update 4. Hello to all of you. We were able to convince Pam to remove the really foolish post that she posted a little more than 3 weeks ago. A few days following that post, we requested a restraining order against her. The day after she posted that post, we phoned her and instructed her to remove it. Instead, she began shouting at us over the phone. She threatened to make sure we lost custody of our children and, even in the unlikely event that we didn't, to make sure they lived under her thumb. That sounded like a threat, so we taped the call and forwarded the call recording and the post to our attorney. We proceeded with the protection order filing when he informed us that it appeared to be a sufficient justification. We were able to obtain a 2-year restraining order against her 2 days ago, after fighting for over 3 weeks, and I will consider it a major victory. We are delighted that my kids and I will be the only ones left, free from the trouble that my husband's relatives